Working at height is a particular risk, as you all know. We attempt to stop ourselves from falling from height. We attempt to stop materials from falling from height. But we've got a gentleman here from Support Site. Is it support? On-site support. Roy Brown, who's going to tell us about how to stop tools from being dropped from height, and the individual tools and methods he's got to avoid tools and possibly materials as well from being dropped from height. I've got a video here which shows you the impact of having things drop from height. So if you can pay attention to this, it's over quite quickly. The first one is a shackle pin. There's Mr. Melonhead, straight through the helmet. The helmet's no good at all. Podger. Just a spanner. This one's the most remarkable. Impaled by a scaffold tube, and even just a bolt. The impact on somebody's neck and head of just a bolt falling from height. So it's very important to stop anything from falling. I think that was from sort of height of the top of a house, not very high, but still a huge impact.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for inviting us in. We've done a lot of work with Kier and a lot of the bigger principal contractors due to objects and tools being dropped from height, causing fatalities and serious permanent injuries. And what we're bringing to you today is a range of solutions we actually provide as a company to secure tools to stop them dropping when working at height. So the whole principle of our range, Foolproof, is to prevent injuries, incidents and downtimes caused by objects being dropped from height. So what we're going to run through today is what do the HSE say, what are the statistics of tools being dropped, the consequences of dropped objects from height, the principles of equipment tethering, foolproof equipment, IT, storage facilities on the PPE, implementation challenges and site support. What we are wanting to, I suppose, really set out from the start here is that we are prepared to work with any company at any high rise or any areas where maybe roof works, exterior works, where there is a risk of tools dropping. We'd like to support you in coming up with some solutions. Obviously, we've got a lot of different trades in the room here. So I suppose after this session, we'll run through a bit of detail how we can get in contact with yourselves, but hopefully we can support yourselves as companies. So this is what the HSE say, and really the onus comes back onto employers where they see a danger, where their staff or subcontractors could be at risk. This is where they need to act. Unfortunately, there's nothing else at the moment that really comes up to the spec of standards that conform to Tethered Tools or any specific standards which we are struggling with. So we've actually had to come up with something ourselves for the time being. So what are the statistics on tools dropping from height? A tool dropping 200 feet will hit the ground in 3 seconds. We all know once that tool's gone, it's totally out of your control. You don't know where that's going to end up. A lot of instances, I know, well, Steve was just showing that video. We have done many presentations, and when you show that, guys say, yes, I've witnessed this and I've witnessed that. And there was a very serious incident in February this year where a guy was working on a mute cherry picker, and at the start of the day he was working on the actual base of it, using it as a bit of a workbench, using his tools. He then had to go up 17 meters to work, forgetting to put some of the tools back in his tool bag. Unfortunately, while he was jerking around, a club hammer dislodged and came over the side and dropped. Unfortunately, a guy was walking underneath just at that point, landed on his helmet. Now, if he was wearing a standard helmet, he would have been killed straight outright, but he was wearing a Petzl, which gives you extra protection, and it split the helmet and his head open, 30 stitches. His comments were afterwards never to go back onto a construction site again. So it does show there is huge implications. There was a huge claim that went in. There's no, should we say, cornered areas and so on, just to give you an example of what is happening. And then an object falling from 30 feet, like we've just seen. Once it gets to a distance of 30 feet from falling, has an impact equivalent to 10 times its own weight. So a lot of guys, we tend to think of smaller tools, tape measures, spanners, podgers, they're only small, only light, but once they actually reach that distance of 30 feet, it has a huge impact. And then the cost to industry. We have some figures from 2011. The cost in the US was $5 billion, and pro rata in the UK, 265 million. Very difficult to put a cost on it, and obviously it is way beyond that now. One thing you've got to consider as well, when objects are dropping, they hit things like scaffolding, objects on the way down, and they can ricochet well out beyond even the site boundaries. That's where it's. This is a test here that's shown, which a company did in America, which we buy a lot of the equipment from, who have been in the industry for a long time, and it gives you an idea of 67 meters. If that dropped at 6 meters, hit something, it can actually bounce out to 120 meters, just to give you an idea of what the ricochet can do. So, what are the statistics around the helmet? Helmets out there, we all know they all conform to 397, which goes through the test of a 5 kg sphere ball dropped from 1 meter, as long as it doesn't split, distort, available for market. But if we go onto a site, we know that a lot of the time where there's people working a lot higher than that above you with heavier equipment, so it's got to look at options of how we can withstand holding those tools back. So, look at some scenarios. I'm just going to see if this works on here. Good, excellent. So what we're looking at here is a mass of the tool weight here, and then the height it's dropped from. Gives you the speed in meters per second, and then the kinetic energy. Most importantly is the last line here, what are the consequences? Now these consequences have been tested with that object landing on the helmet. So that's a 1 kg tool dropping from 3 meters, which is a floor, one floor say, giving you that speed. But once you start moving up to different heights, 2 floors, so that's a minor injury, that would actually crack the helmet open. 3 floors, that can cause a major injury. 4 floors. This is statistics that have been set up, and obviously the speed something falls. Now, you can't categorically say that's going to be the outcome, but that is going to be a likely outcome of something being dropped from that height. So hopefully that makes sense. So, moving on, what objects are being dropped? We have a lot of cases where hand tools, power tools, electrical devices, small things, phones, radios, cameras, surveyor's equipment, many items. Then what are the implications? This is something that obviously we all know of and can probably think of cases, but injuries to workforce, most and foremost. Pedestrians. There's a particular project in London where it was a very small footprint to the site, and they said if they only knew how many tools, objects, materials fell outside that boundary with busy, well, I suppose a lot of pedestrians around all day long, there was a lot of risk at hand, but fortunately no one was injured. But it does go to show that, you know, there's a guy who's been working for 20 years as a carpenter, and he was dislodging some pegs in some timber, and his hammer just slipped straight out of his hand, bounced over the edge protection, and went down 7 floors. And you can say, well, I never drop anything, which we all could say, but there is a time. You don't know what happened. You may trip yourself, drop something, and they could roll off the edge. Many applications. But the implications, so loss and damage to costly equipment, collateral damage, downtime, huge downtime. There's a guy on one of the Wembley Stadium. He lost his helmet in the wind because he didn't have a chin strap. It took him 20 minutes to go and get that. Not only to go and get it, but also walking through a dangerous site with no helmet on. So it gives you consideration for those areas. And then if something does happen, impact on reputation can be huge. And then litigation. Other preventive measures that are out there, obviously exclusion zones are very important, so where there's working. And then obviously edge protection, netting systems, and last resort, tool tethering. But it'd be good to turn that round the other way, consider tool tethering first. And then looking at the risk assessment. So we're not saying, for example, Kier are sending on a mandate as of next month that the specific trades will have to all comply with tethering of tools, scaffolders, etc. So guys working on their sites will have to consider these things, but obviously they're looking at the risk assessment as well. Can they risk assess it out? Are there areas that they can work on? And this is something we can work through with each individual company. And then some of the ranges we can offer. So instrument retention, so it's your cameras, your phones, your radios. Lifting and storage, quick switch system, which I'll demonstrate at the end. Retrofit solution. So we're looking at guys who've come onto site, got their own tools. We're not expecting guys to go out and buy a whole range of tools, but what we do have available, which we'll demonstrate shortly, is solutions that actually put an anchorage point on an existing tool, be it through a heat shrink or a D-ring. Then tool lanyards, accessories, support services. I'll just run through a couple of images we've got here of some of the examples. I've got some samples of these today. And then things like lanyards. So you've got your anchorage lanyards for heavy equipment, wrist lanyards, standard retractable lanyards. This quick switch system here, I'll demonstrate later. It's not easy to see, but the whole point is it works off a clip system. So all times that is connected to you. And then some retrofit solutions, which I'm afraid the images aren't particularly good here. But the whole point is on some of these larger sites, when guys are coming onto site, there is a need for tethered tools. They haven't got any tethered material there to be able to, or anything to attach their tools. This is something they can get set up pretty quick. And then lifting and storage, belts, phones, chin straps. Some other options here on chin straps and attaching the helmet. And then we're looking at other areas such as IT. So guys going out today with the iPads or real-time data and need to be reporting back, but obviously when they're climbing stairs, scaffolding, ladders, wherever, the 3 points of contact, what do they do with that iPad or iPad mini or phone? And what we've come up with is a bit of a design here for Kier and some of the other groups in special pockets which will suit all the IT equipment, so you can actually store that away, plus it's tethered, so when you're using it, if you do drop it, it's not long enough to hit the ground, so it's safe at all times, and then keeping you safe as well. We can also do a lot of the bespoke posters for yourself, so these posters here can be branded with your company name on. On the left there, we run through a list here of a nice simple process on how to retrofit your tool, and that goes by weight of tool. Then we select the correct lanyard, and then the correct retrofit solution. And then these posters here can obviously be set up to put around the sites to raise awareness. There's some of the other sectors we're currently working in. So you've got the high rise, you've got the cross rail where obviously they're going down in the shaft, industrial and power where there's obviously protection around equipment and materials, oil and gas, security, plant and maintenance, another one. So tower crane erectors, or guys like working at height, erecting plant and maintenance equipment. Some of the companies we're currently working with, several of these now have made it mandatory on all their sites, so any subcontractors coming on site are having to work with them in their policies. And then implementation challenges. A lot of guys we all know, working for years, never had to use tethered tooling, but then the time comes and it's obviously a must, and there's obviously a lot of resistance. It's like the gloves and glasses and helmets scenario. Turn the clock back 15, 20 years, none of these were implemented. Now they are. It becomes part of a daily chore sometimes, but once they get used to it, it's part of their tool bag. So this is, once again, what we like to do is get down with the guys on site, talk to them on their level, find out what tools they're using and how we can provide a solution for them. And then this is some posters which we're working with Kier on. They've actually set these up, so these are the posters they've got set up around their sites, which obviously the do's and the don'ts. And what they've actually done is good. They've actually specified where their boundaries are. So it's not easy to see on this one here, but here it's within the 4 meters of a leading edge or any high rise on the outside of the building, internal shafts, and then obviously on any roof works. So they've actually specified that very well. So it's not actually doing a categoric across the board. They're saying in specific zones on site, that's where they must be used. That's a bit of a brief overview of what we can do. So we're looking at the issues, the problems, and then we're coming up with a solution how we can provide that. What we'll just do is send around 1 or 2 of these tools just so you can actually see what we can offer here. So what we were saying earlier is do the heat shrink. So we're looking at tools, maybe whatever it be, a spanner, podger, whatever, and you're looking to get a retrofit solution on an existing tool. Now what we supply is the retrofit solution, which is a heat shrink with a webbing and an anchorage point on the side. That comes as a complete unit. This is the largest size we do, is 71mm. They start from a 19mm, and you can literally just slide that over the tool, and that will actually heat shrink down to half its size. So it's a bit of an extreme case for this tool, but just to give you the idea, and every one will have a weight limit on to suit the tool. So I'm going to pass those around, then have a little look as we send those round. And then other situations where a lot of tools will obviously have a shaft with the geometry, each end of the tool being larger than a shaft. So what we call is a double D. So you can actually remove the centre pin, slide it over, put the centre pin back in, and that's actually giving you a very robust anchorage point as well. And we can do these as separate items on there. Make more sense when you see them close up. Some other options here, so you've got things like screwdrivers. Untangle. Just mind your fingers on that one there. Still fixes nips. What we're looking at the whole time is to reduce the hazard and making sure that obviously once you're tethered up, we've got the correct lanyard to suit the weight of your tool. So at all times you've got to make sure you've got the correct lanyard for the correct tool. And all the lanyards will come with a weight limit on them. And obviously you'll see on the ones that we've sent around already, 4 kg, whatever it may be. One thing we will just point out early on, that a lot of guys are going out there looking for the cheapest option, which is fair enough. But they've got to consider that when you're going for a fabric lanyard and you're working in dirty, damp, dusty environment, you've got to be careful because that does start corroding pretty quick, as opposed to the heavier duty core lanyards. So a lot of equipment that's available. What we'd like to do is to we'll have a contact afterwards if we can, and what we'll do, we'll actually send around a brochure which we've got with all the products in. So you've actually got that to hand, and you can forward it on to anyone else within your department which may be suitable, health and safety, or yourselves, and we'll be prepared to talk it through and what solutions we've got. And then other areas, it's gone. So things like your retractables, so scaffolders, scaffold levels there, send it around with the actual scaffold spanners. So the actual spanner itself has a barrel built into it as a new product. That comes complete.
Roy, where some tradesmen will work with lots of different tools,
Yeah.
you're going to start looking like Inspector Gadget.
Yes.
How are all these connected to you?
Two options. I was going to run on to that. One is we generally have a tool belt. So, for example, either a standard webbing belt or a padded, depending on which you prefer, whichever suits you best for your trade. Then on that, we supply extra loops such as this one here, which gives you an anchorage point on there. So it gives you can clip your lanyard on. What the first impression a lot of guys think is, right, I've got about 6 lanyards this side and 6 that side. Or we say no, because often what we find is most guys only up on working with perhaps 3 to 5 tools at any one time. Generally they'll be in a box or a bucket or whatever. So you can have say 2 lanyards off each side, and then you just go down and attach it to your tool for that required task. So you're not sitting there with a big bulk of tools and lanyards sitting around you. But there's a lot of things we're looking at, even like a hammer. All S-wing hammers come with a hole in the handle. We've actually manufactured this to get a loop D-ring suited to fit all S-wings. So that is actually a product you can buy on its own, so that can be immediately attached, and then you've got your anchorage point. Obviously then you have your lanyard on here. But obviously what the guys are thinking all day long, Chip, is, well, I'm not going to feed all that back into my frog like that. So what we do is we've got 2 options, a heavy duty side impact. So that's a side impact. So you're keeping that attached to your belt at all times. And then to release that, you just pull the clip back, hammers out, and you're working away. And then obviously back in on the side impact again. So that's the solution for that one.
If you're working away, do you clip that to your wrist, or do you just keep that sort of on the...
This one here.
Yeah.
Generally, we would not recommend, as a company, we wouldn't recommend anything to your wrist unless it was literally a pliers, or because if that did go, and that can give you quite a jolt. Generally, what we'd say is have a tool belt of a type, and then from there, literally just, we do lots of little clips that can go on, just over the loop, and you just loop that onto it, next to your frog. So you just come straight out of it. So there's a lot of options you'll see on the brochure we'll send around afterwards that you can see in there, and any questions from there, please contact us. But then we're looking at some sort of heavy equipment. So you may have things like your, let's think, grinders, mini kangos, big hammer drills. You're working at height and you're not going to attach them to yourself, or even a heavy sledgehammer. You need to attach it to a fixture. So we call this the anchorage lanyard, which you can actually choke that round a fixture, be it a scaffold tube, mute, column, whatever. And then this here gives you a 3 metre working length away. We do these in a 3 metre and a 1.5. And then it's giving you a heavy duty carabiners to clip straight onto the tool. This will take up to an 11 kg tool. So that's generally something that's heavy duty enough for there. We can go beyond that to heavier duty, more rigid lanyards for your heavy equipment. So I don't want to pass it around, have a look at that one there. And then things like another item which is very popular for falling out the sky, cordless drills. So two things, a lot of guys will grab the cordless and choke that round the handle just below the trigger, which is fine, but there's two dangers with that. One is, and obviously that's clipped to yourself, if that drill was to drop, and that could catch on the trigger, you don't know what you've got in the end there, be it a drill bit, sharp, and that could be spinning around causing more danger. The other issue is as well, as that comes down, that hits the side of a scaffolding or a building, the battery can just drop straight out. So what we've come up with, it's an American product, is a battery boot. So you put the battery in here with the handle sticking out, so I didn't bring a drill with me today, and then you actually wrap this around the top, so you're actually attaching the battery to the body, and then you actually a drawstring behind to make that nice and tight and secure, and then you've got your anchorage point behind, so that just clips straight onto it. So that sits inside your frog. I know it's a nod up the top, they may be interested in that. And then things like phones, working at height, we call it the a self-adhesive pad. We would recommend that all phones, cameras, whatever, you put a protection case around it first, plastic, before you apply the pad. That just simply sits on your belt, sits in your pocket. Pull that out, that's actually attached. So they can actually, so when you pull it out, they can lock at different points as well. That's another option there. It's actually something they use a lot in the American military on that. Same again with a lot of traffic marshals or guys working on a site with radios and working at height. Another issue, one, not only where it's placed, but also using it when working at height can actually not give yourself the best protection. So we do what we call the universal pouch here, but in the back is an inbuilt retractable lanyard. So you can actually clip that to your radio, so as you pull that out, so it's always going to be attached as well. Something else in there. And but just before we show the last one, we do what we call the bolt bags. So all your fixings, fittings, whatever they may be, go inside the bag, down to 2-inch nails, whatever, and that goes upside down, they won't fall out. So you have that on the side of you. A lot of guys, when they lean forward, the pouch, all the tools, nails, bolts, washers, go everywhere. But this has got a mouth on the inside, so once you push all that inside, they won't come out. I'll send that around, have a look at that. And on the slide there we mentioned the quick switch system. So what happens here is just when you're working on a project, I'm just thinking that building opposite here, just recently being built, you may be working on the finished facade and there's not a lot of protection around, you may be up in your mute or whatever. What happens here is that the whole system is secure, so you may have pedestrians, you may have work colleagues underneath, and you're just, say, commissioning, or you're out there finishing off the roofing. The whole system works where this clip here will not be detached from your docking station. I'll pass this around so you can see clearly in a minute. So what happens is you have a fixed lanyard, all screw gated. So once you're fastened up, that's all secure. So you lean forward, there's no way it can come out the pouch. The only way it can come is wearing your wristband, which actually has got the same dock, which actually can be released from there. The only way that can then be used is, if that goes overboard, you're actually sealed up at all times. A lot of guys are using these on, say exterior, so facade, and there's a lot of protection, all scaffolding down, or crane erectors. But you can use it in multiple tools, even things, your smaller tools like your tape measures. Now, one of the most common tools to be dropped, you lean outside the mute, outside the building, that goes, and then you can interchange as well. So you've got guys on the same mute, same platform, they can interchange as well. This is a product that's becoming more and more popular, but not sort of a range I would say that we would be promoting to sort of cover the site of everyone on site. But what we would suggest is a lot of guys get a couple of sets up on site and they're away. So if it gets to a high risk zone where there's not a lot of protection but you've got to get a task done, this is the sort of system we can supply. Well, that's really all I had. So if there's any questions now or later, I'll leave you my card. But if there's any other questions now, I'll be glad to see if we can answer them.
Are these available on the outlets on the island?
We would deliver it direct.
So it's
here.
only direct from yourself?
Yeah, and we would deliver next day. Yeah. So,
What's the approximate costings then for some of it?
what we'd do is, because obviously Kia's brought us along and promoted us, we would actually provide everyone here with their rates on that basis. So I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but give you retail, for example, you're probably going to get work on 40% off this, but something like that belt there, fully kitted out, list price about 200 quid. Give you an idea. Some of the lanyards there, the very small lanyards, starting off, or this one here for example, is a £8 or £9 list. The heavier duty coil, ones that come with test and all, the ones that can't be, well the carabiners as well, be more like the 30 because of the test ratings and obviously what they have to go through, just to give you a bit of an idea. So we'd make sure because of the event today you would get that preferred pricing, yeah. Well, thank you all very, very much. Appreciate you giving us a slot.